Brothers, are you ready to tap into your embodied masculinity? The Sacred Sons Immersion, a 2-day community experience, is coming to a city near you. Sacred Sons is expanding all around the globe. We are training men daily, weekly, monthly in our leadership training program in order to bring this movement, to bring these experiences all around the globe. Coming up next, April 8th and 9th, the immersion will be in Portland, Oregon. April 15th and 16th, the immersion will be in Seattle, Washington. Shout out to the Pacific Northwest. After that, April 29th and 30th, the immersion will be in Dublin, Ireland. Also 29th and 30th of April, the immersion will be happening same time, Chicago, Illinois, led by my brother Kareem Manuel. Go back and listen to an episode with Kareem and I jamming on the podcast. May 13th and 14th, the immersion is coming back for the third time to Austin, Texas. And May 20th through 21st, the immersion will be in New York, and back across the pond in Bristol, England. You do not want to miss these events. If you're a brother out there who has been resonating with this podcast, with this messaging, if you're a brother who's looking for connection to other men on the same path, but also connection to your heart, this is an opportunity to drop into a real, authentic community and also to get back into your body, doing the work on the pillars of connection, confrontation, celebration, and awareness. If you are interested, please go to sacredsons.com, click on immersions, and register today. And with that, this is going to be a podcast episode unlike any other, because today we're bringing through thunder and lightning. Please welcome Kale Ka'alekahi and Kevin Walton.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Kale Ka'alekahi, and here at the Timber Moose Lodge in Utah. Just here for our men's weekend, and just wanted to be sure that we could put something out there for the people that are wanting to see something like this. And on top of it, I'm not only here on my own, I'm one part of the grand design that creates thunder and lightning. So I'd like to introduce to you our brother Kevin Walton, Mr. Lightning himself.
Hey, Sauce Radio.
Sauce Radio.
What's up, y'all? Honored to be here with my bro, my brother Kyle. I always love rocking with you, bro.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I love this too, and this is like the first time we've really been able, to sit in this way.
Yeah.
And to share how you and I have conversations. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we were bringing up before the cameras got on was how we kind of dance with each other in our ways of understanding, philosophy, worldviews, thought patterns, and things like that. And so I think maybe a good thing for me to help with the conversation is just to kind of hear where you're at and when you were talking about that with me.
Yeah, legit. I love it because what's interesting in the journey of us, right, when we have those conversations, and it's always we both move with so much energy, right? And we both recognize the heart space we hold for the things that we speak on and we hear about, and I love it. And when I hear our conversations, what I always recognize is even when it seems like there's a disagreement, right? In truth, when you get to it every time, we always agree. And I always think about that when I share certain things and I hear you talk, not even in our conversations, but hear you speak on things. Yeah. It's like when I hear you say, I was like, oh, he absolutely agrees with me in the way that he functions. But when we talk about him, like I was mentioning right off camera, was that there's certain designated spaces that we hold our heart to, that we hold, that we focus on in it, even when we're sharing, we're still tapping into that comprehensiveness of life. You know what I mean? I think that if there was a centralized theme that I would think about the things that we speak on, it's always wanting to drive to the nature of how life is designed to be lived holistically and comprehensively. In that connection.
No, it's beautiful, man, because that was one of the things too, with that understanding of what agreement and disagreement. To me, there's always there's a fashion to it, there's a style. I'm not gonna want to have this conversation with everybody. Yeah. But I do it with you because you have a way of speaking to it that helps other people, especially in cognitive ways, to find a path
100%
to that.
Yep.
Where I come from it in the story, and I come from it in this way. So the reason why the disagreement looks like an agreement, I think, is because when I'm talking about let's say from the one comes the many, from the many comes the one, but from the all is everything. So
Exactly. And that's
So
right.
it's like-
and that's why I love it, because you know how adamant I am about the more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, you are.
Like adamant.
Adamant about the more.
Right. And so, but I love when we first started talking about it, and how when you spoke to that, I could see where your mind went. Like I think about that time we were in Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
And because that concept misconstrued would think the concept of more being like, how much more can you get, right?
Yeah.
And take, yet when you actually use references about the more a lot, and I don't know if you always recognize it or not, but in the space of it, like when I talk about being the more, it's exactly what you're speaking to. Everything is a part of the all of creation.
Yeah.
Right? And everything operates in synergy.
Yeah.
Meaning that it's all intertwined, everything has everything necessary to see everything thrive together, which is how existence is designed.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we hope so.
Right. I mean, what's interesting about it is you don't even have to hope. It shows us. Nature shows us. Right? Like the nature of, and even the things that we constantly meet in ourselves, it's constantly being revealed. But the question is, can we continue to own ourselves and become self-aware enough to recognize it? Because when we don't, that's what leads us to playing out the distortions of misalignments. And the concept of what I speak to of the more is the recognition that if we're a part of all that is, right? Then that means we have access to the gifts that all that is has, because we have our part to play to contribute to all that is, right? The nurturing of it. And so I thought about this when you were speaking in Convergence 7, where you were speaking to the nature of a seed, right? Because you were speaking to how you tend to the seed and the nurture of growth. And that seed represents the more, right? Inside of that seed is an entire fucking forest, is an entire like dynamic that in truth and in alignment is designed to, as it accesses the more of itself, it gives more of itself.
Right.
And that's the truth of all of us, that if we were to live from the truth of ourselves from the inside out, all we would ever do is access more of what we're capable of to contribute it to everything.
Sure.
And when you think of like the notion of the community, right, and the village and the family, it's like everything's designed to both hold the sustainability of where it is and always meet the capacity of what's possible without sacrificing the foundation of what is. But we've trained ourselves in a lot of ways in different cultures to think that one had to be given up for the other and that they weren't designed to live comprehensively. But when I think of the nature of the ancient future, right, I think of the infinite wisdom of all of creation. And that's what it lives in. And so, you know, because as much as the cosmos hold what's possible for us, they also hold history.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even history, even beyond this planet. And so I think about this
Earth,
relationship, right?
Let's talk about Earth.
Well, let's talk about but think about the things that are out there that actually exist here on Earth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so to understand that relationship.
Yeah, like that's there. But I think one of the things that's important too is that, you know, when we do talk about nature, when I hear you talk about nature, nature isn't all in agreement on a single direction on what that looks like. Nature is not in oneness. And the way I understand that is like in forests, for example. If you have an ecosystem that's already thriving on its own for thousands of years and you introduce another one that's not familiar with that ecosystem, they don't know how to be in companionship and relationship with the other trees. So like pine trees, for example, that grow in Hawaii, they keep dropping pines and it's acidic to the soil. So they kill off everything else around them and there's only one that can live, which is other pine trees. So when we're talking about nature, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Like also too, like when you look at bears, like bears will kill their own young, eat their own young. There's no reason for it. Because their numbers are dwindling, but they're not thinking about numbers like how we do. Like, and the same, for example, is like when we talk about, you know, carbon emissions and all this, we got to save the rainforest because in order for us to continue to survive, we're not going to save nature with that way of thinking. You know?
Correct.
You see what I mean? And so that oneness that I'm talking about is not that I don't hear it and see it where you're coming from. What I'm saying is that it's a dangerous thing because if you just have oneness, it's upon whose direction that we should all comply and be, and what is the more bringing to us? Because if we shape ourselves to a purity of a singleness, of a oneness, that's just another way of saying fascism.
But that's a misconception of oneness.
See, this is where you and I get into tussles.
Right, but that's the dope, because this is what this does is provide the clarity necessary. Because when we have these conversations, and like I'll guarantee you, on a long enough timeline of conversation, we're gonna land in a space that goes, yes.
Yeah,
and that's what I mean, like
because we're adults.
Right. Exactly, because we're adults. We can have healthy conversations.
We can talk about
we can talk about life. And so when I speak to oneness, how unity works, unity is not everything being uniform, the same. Unity thrives through the diverse nature of elements working together.
Yes.
Right? That's what oneness actually is.
Yes,
it's not everything being the same.
Yeah.
It's the actual synergy and the interactivity of all life.
Yeah.
And what the planet shows us, so when you describe what you're talking about with the pines, right? Like I think about it in two ways.
Yeah.
There's the ways that humans introduce things, and then there's the ways that the way the earth flows with weather and different dynamics, right?
You're right.
So when you think of different areas that are happening, how the world's changing constantly, like the deserts used to be savannas, right? And that changed. The Amazon jungle, when you go underneath, you start finding all these other structures and things that existed, right? On a long enough, like if things continue and we have the space to watch it, you'll find the way that nature's always looking to meet it. But if there's a moment of misconception, because it happens with us too, right? Like if we were operating in the awareness of self, from jump, we would be able to recognize our emotions, our feeling states, the things that are happening outside of us, define ourselves appropriately and move appropriately. But if we don't have that awareness, right, then say our parents don't pay attention to us, we go, what does that mean for me? It means I'm worthless. And then we start playing a different pattern out, even though that's not the inherent thing. But then over time, for you to live truthfully in yourself, what comes to light to be addressed? That exact misalignment. And so I think about that with nature. When you think of how nature's interacting with itself, there's the glimpses of the synergy, and then there's the constant restoration. I think about that with like ants or with predator-prey relationships or all those dynamics, right? That there's still a relationship happening even with what appears to be either destructive or something, because life is always revealing the way that things find where the synergy is.
So like to that point as well, so you talked about the Amazon, right? So stories from long ago of like how the people are in their environment, they weren't concerned about what it was that they were doing for nature, right? They were concerned at what nature was doing with them, not necessarily for them either. It's like what are the boundaries and our limitations of our existence here, because of the very thing that we love is feeling the impact of our existence, and that's a very heartbreaking thing. So when you think about the Amazon rainforest, certain minds of people are like, this thing just grew here. And like it just became because nature does this and the synergy, and it just was here. But it was actually humans putting in the effort and the time and the understanding and the relationship to create an entire forest that would continue on. And it was all led through song. So they would have song lines, throughout the generations to remind them and remember that your ancestors were here. They left the seeds, they left the compost, they composted themselves, even their own bodies here. And as the generations traveled and they came back again through the song line, they remembered, because it said, this is what our relationship is as human beings, is to be tenders of the wild. And so when I hear you talk, what I'm hearing is that it's very rationally generated inside of human beings as being the purveyors of change. And what I'm saying is that nature stewards us, not us stewarding nature.
Awesome. So what I'm saying is it's a reciprocal relationship, because we're in it. Right, like human beings
are we though?
We are, because we're interacting with it, right? Like you have the ability to.
To what level though? See what I mean?
The level is to whatever capacity of awareness we're operating from.
In a city?
In everything, because cities are poorly designed in a lot of different ways, right?
And that affects the mind of people.
Right. Well, but they built the city from that mind. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. Like, the relationship, right? So we talk about it, and that's what I mean. Like, because what I speak to is the comprehensive lens of the ways that everything's interacting, and then to recognize how we either move in alignment with things or not. So if we're operating in alignment, then that means we're operating more authentic in nature. If we're operating more authentic in nature, and by nature I mean our natural state of being, then you live in the actual recognition of synergy.
What is the natural state of being?
The natural state of being is the accordance of harmony, right? The command surrender principle. So empowered, connected, and whole. Natural state of being is the recognition that if you exist, you have something to offer.
Right.
And if you exist, you're connected to all that is, right? Okay. And if you're connected to all that is, then you have everything necessary to be all that you are and contribute that to all of it. Don't you think
that's a lot for a single person to like even comprehend, to be in connection to all those things?
Only
I mean, if I take somebody out in the jungle and they ain't never been there, but then they're talking like you, they gonna die.
If they don't understand what the fuck they're talking about.
But that's what I mean, is like, they might be like, I'm connected to everything and to all. If I put them out in the jungle and they talk like that, but they don't know what the jungle is, they can't claim connection to the thing.
100%.
So that's what I mean.
Now you're speaking to someone. It's only overreaching if, again, you're describing the act of someone not knowing how to embody what they're talking about, which happens often.
Yeah.
Right? And I think about that even in the exploration of cultural development in every facet. So when you're talking about this idea, if someone isn't living in the truth of themselves, right, they're going to get that confronted in whatever way. Nature is a great offering of that, right?
Because she is.
And so exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Like nature constantly shows us the dynamic, and if we live in the truth of ourselves, we recognize the dynamic of all of us. That means you move in the sacredness and the respect of it.
Does that help you survive in different environments if you don't have connection to the things? Like
but if you were living
relationship,
correct. But if you're living in the natural state of being, then
saying.
you're living in that connection, and that's what I'm saying. So because it's twofold. We all have the access, but we don't always live in the conscious awareness of it. And so there's development to that, right? The ability to understand through ritual and dedication. And then there's the exploration of the self in relation to it, because that relationship is both.
Explain to me, how does a person with that understanding of themselves, living in that truth and that alignment, like you're saying, how do they navigate themselves in the truth, which is nature, if they're never in it, but they're just relying on that understanding? Like, you have somebody who's transporting themselves from one climate-controlled container to the next, which is a car, to the gym, to the thing, and then they come to where I live in Hawaii, and they're bringing all that with them, but they talk the way that you do. And I'm wondering, like, where is that connection at?
Well, talking and living, remember this, talking and living are two different things.
I know, but they think they're living it.
Right, but the question is,
so
if they are,
there and they're still committing, what do you call that? Degradation.
Then they're not living it.
In disrespect.
Right, then they're not living it.
But then they have to go and engage with a relationship, is where I'm
correct. But if they were living it, they would. If they were living it, that would be automatic. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the relationship that we're talking about is, like, I honor everything you're saying. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. To live in the truth of this practice and this way of life, that's exactly what they would do. If someone's talking about it and not living it, you're going to find out very quickly whether it's true or not the moment they show up.
I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm expressing is, if for someone to truly live in the truth of themselves, then they'll show up in that honor and respect and sacredness no matter where they go. They don't impose themselves. They don't think they're above something. And they also don't belittle themselves, but they honor the nature of it, and they'll show up that way. And that's, like, for me, every time when I travel and I go different places, I very much tune into the space and the land and feel home, because I can feel that belongingness to the earth. Do you know what I'm saying?
I hear that,
and that's the.
But I also hear a lot of people on that same mode, and you're saying, well, they're not really living it, and you're telling me you're living it. But if somebody from the outside saw you do what you do, they'd probably be like, this dude don't belong here, even though you're saying you have it. But that's what I mean.
Right.
It's like,
but you.
It's not an individualistic pursuit, is what I'm saying. It can't work that way.
Well, but it's never about it being an individual pursuit, though.
But if it was different, then we'd be seeing our society in a very different way.
But our society is reflective of the misalignments we've played out.
Which is that oneness connected to all, and everything is me, and I belong everywhere all at once.
Well, there's the idea of it. Make no mistake, because what I hear you saying, and you can correct me if this is inaccurate, I hear you saying that people talk about it, not living it. And that is a huge, huge thing. I'm adamant about living the embodiment of this, because that's what's necessary. Talking about it means nothing.
True.
And people talk about shit for ages. People will be like, no, I love you, and then fucking chop someone's head off. Like, it's like people say whatever, but the way they move in life is going to reflect the nature of what they embody.
Yeah, I see that.
And oneness, again, is not about selfishness. You've heard me say this before, right? Selfishness and selflessness are both misalignments.
Yeah, but what if the person truly believes that they're being selfless, and along the way, their unintended consequences is the things that's really damaging everybody else?
Right. Well, hear what I just said, right? Because now you said, so what I say, that selfishness and selflessness are both misalignments. You just expressed, what if someone's being selfish and what they're doing is creating nothing along the way?
Or selfish regardless.
Right, but I'm saying both of those are off. Both of those are going to create the degradation.
I'm saying the action of what happens, like the possibility and the consequence of those things, is what speaks louder than what these people are imagining, whatever alignment they're in.
Right, but that's what we're talking about, right? The authentic nature of someone, every decision you make has impact, right? That's the point. Like, when I talk in the practice foundationally, right, I say the first responsibility everyone has is their creative energy. What choices you're making, the shit's coming out of your mouth, how you move. That's everyone's first responsibility. The way that you interact with all of life, right? Because every choice you're making is bringing back information and feedback and consequence and results, right? I'm adamant about that.
Yeah.
We're on the same page with that. Yeah. And what happens is...
the difference is language, but keep going.
Okay. So in the space of that, when someone isn't living in truth and then they act that out, it creates that distortion, and then you witness the distortion. And we have a whole society reflecting of distortion, right? But the invitation of recognizing distortion isn't the invitation to go, and that's why society's fucked up, right? It's the invitation to go, so how do we adjust that?
Right.
And what you and I live for is the adjustment.
Yeah.
Right? We live for that in ourselves, to live in the truth of ourselves, and then the ability to guide first through the way we live.
Yeah.
And then our words just become an addition. Where some people lead with words with no concept of the embodiment, and they're the ones that will perpetuate the distortion until they get an experience that fucking confronts them and rocks them in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. And that's why I think too, like what you're saying is like the language has to match the behavior. And,
Exactly.
and
that's the integrity piece.
Integrity piece, yeah. But then I also know like the certain language that you're speaking is what's causing these misalignments as well. You know what I mean? Like the idea that a rational mind can be rational is preposterous to me. Like that's just a whole mind fuck right there. And then also too, like this language of conceptualizing everything, because then now you've just labeled the mystery when the mystery doesn't need to be labeled. Essentially, you're just saying like, I can know all of this because I claim it to be this thing, for I put it into my conceptualization as a human. And that's what's like causing a lot of
What
these
about what I
disruptions.
say conceptualizes the mystery? Because have you heard me talk about the mystery before?
To me, you're talking about connected to the all, and you're always belonging everywhere all at once, so there's no room for the mystery is what I hear.
Awesome. So this is a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we have a moment where it seems like we're not on the same page, it's when I hear what you described to me is I hear the lens that you filter it through, but that other piece you stated, right, isn't even close to what I said.
Yeah.
But I can see.
But I'm honest about it. I told
Exactly.
you.
That's why I love our conversations.
Because I know what I'm saying.
Right. But
By
you're
way of your speak, it's like there's another part, there's another perspective on that other side, and that's my voice.
well, but understand that your voice is very much intertwined with the things I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
But when you state like what you stated now, that I'm labeling the mystery, nothing I said actually labels the mystery. But that's
Not necessarily you labeling it, but
Right.
the conceptualization of everywhere all at once all the time, belonging to everything.
what about the concept of that labels the mystery though?
How can anybody be everywhere all the time, all at once, connected to everything and know everything all the time? Like, explain that to me.
Well, this is the journey of life, right? Yeah. When I say being connected, right? So in the practice, I talk about this whole game, right? The game of limitation. It's the exploration of unlimited creative potential.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is exploring the nature of acting like and pretending we don't know what we know, and we're exploring different ways that we remember. That's this whole journey. So I teach that in the practice. That's the foundational thing I teach in the practice, that this is all the game of that. And so we live in the exploration of remembering through every choice, through every action, through every confrontation, through every experience that reflects it. So when I talk about all of creation, I'm speaking to the mystery of life is the invitation to explore. There's no labeling that. That is the void of unlimited creative potential. And so when I speak to us being connected to it, it doesn't take away from mystery. It invites us to it, because that's all the mystery does.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I do. I hear what you're saying, but I also like, because I hear what you're saying, I understand, and we do have a lot of connections in it, and that's why I love it too. Don't get me wrong. But also too, I think because we have limitations and that there is boundaries for us as human beings, that's what allows the mystery to continue to thrive and to live. To imagine that we have unlimited creative potential because we tap into the mystery is another extraction.
Well, I would say it differently. What I would say is that the recognition of where our parameters are is the invitation to explore further. Do you know what I mean? It's not an invitation to be reckless. It's not an invitation to be disillusioned. I don't teach disillusionment. No. Right? What I teach is the honesty of where you are and what's possible. Right. And so the invitation to recognize this game in human exploration is to understand like what is possible in this dynamic. What is possible in my relationship with nature? What is possible in my relationship to everyone around me? What is possible with language? What is possible with our thoughts, right? What is possible with all of it? And then for me, because also this practice didn't come from, I don't have a guru that I studied under all this stuff. This was like tapping into access and insights and not even know what the fuck to do with it until I started to explore more of it and then come across people who had, on their journey, had different insights that when reflected, I could start to see how things piece together. And so that same thing, when I hear you talk, all I'm ever doing is absorbing this information, receiving it, and I'm just wired at this point to see where it all sinks. Right. That's my design, right? And so then I'm always exploring, how do we continue to bring that to light for the world to recognize it so people understand just how connected they are to things and not separate, so they actually can treat everything as sacred, not above or below them, not thinking, like, we talk about it with like colonization of things and stuff, or someone's like, oh, that's how you're doing things? Well, let's come over here and clean that up, because this is how it really works, right? And it's like, that's not how this shit works. And actually, there was a really dope, I heard a...
Are you sure?
is that really, that's what you think? Okay, so then in that, right? Like that's the distortion. And I thought about this through a story I once heard in I think it was an audiobook, or is it an audiobook or a documentary interview? And in it, there was a guy who was a missionary, and he was a linguist, right? So he would go to learn languages of places and then share the word of Christ through language, right? And he goes to this one culture in the Amazon. And in the Amazon, they, or it was either Amazon or some South, it was South America though, for sure. I don't remember if it was Brazil, it might have been Brazil. But inside of there was I know, it's great. And that's the end. A missionary went to visit a group in Brazil, and he's like, look, I know things. So in the space of it, right, this particular village and this particular tribe had a very specific language that's not recognized by a lot of different places. And every person they sent would leave frustrated, angry, because they didn't know how to like pick up on it. Those things they couldn't get there. And this guy comes in with his usual thing, well, I know a lot of languages, linguists and all this stuff, and he's going through it, and he starts seeing, like he starts to pick up on certain things, but then there's certain barriers in himself he doesn't know how to get over. And he's like, I don't understand what's happening. And what it was is, he had to actually humble himself, right? And he actually eventually left left the church, left the mission, all this stuff, because it'll do that to you. You know what I'm saying? Because it broadened his awareness of life. So what he recognized was, in their language, there were certain things they conveyed, but then everything after that became only spoken through sound. And then in the sound, all it was recognized, everything was only recognized in the present moment. So they didn't even speak in any reference of past and future. They were just here. And when he started to take off his fucking hat about who he thought he was, he humbled himself to learn as if he was a child. And as he learned, it broadened his scope about what's possible in life. And so he was like, well, then how could I possibly go back to that? Because that isn't like true. And so then it was like, that notion is exactly what I'm speaking to. It was, people come in with their ideas of how they think things go, but then they're not living in the truth themselves in connection to all that is. This dude had a humbling experience to bring him to light, to realize there was something more, that when he actually connected to it, changed his whole perspective of life. You know what I mean? And then his family had to understand this newfound way of being that he was operating from in the understanding of this culture. And so, and this is what when I talk about, like, when we think about unity, right? It's diverse elements working together, which means every aspect of the diversity has something to contribute to the inclusivity of the all. And that's the invitation. That's truth. Right? Truth is all inclusive. It's not there's nothing subjective about truth. It doesn't get to hold itself and skew to one narrative or the other, or go, this is true and this is not true, right? It holds everything. And so that's the invitation. And so to me, when I think about our conversations, it's always like, we'll share, we'll see if things are being either misinterpreted or construed a certain way, or if we have different definitions of a word and we explore it differently. And then as we continue to talk, we just land in fucking unity, bro.
For sure. There's a companionship.
Here we are, just walking together.
So one of the key things about that story, which I love, is actually the culture.
100%.
So he left the thing to come into another culture that has been embedded in a place for thousands of years, that created a language that nobody else understood, because they've been so in tune and tapped and connected to everything that they were at in the place that they were in.
100%.
And that guy, claiming he knew everything because the higher God told him so, came over there, got his whole shit rocked.
100%.
Because there was people that held an indigenous soul that they spoke to, that then changes the whole narrative.
100%.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like the engagement of people that think they know and they're connected to everything is the story of that guy who went to another culture, who were there in their place and nurtured and cultivated what they did without expansion, without extraction, but learning the boundaries and limitations of their existence, that they created beauty in the world and showed their admiration for the world that they live in, so that others can see their beauty. And it changed that guy's whole life, that he had to like change up his whole family dynamic.
But that's because the world he was living was not living in the space that he was connected to everything.
But those people were.
But this is what I'm saying.
They are.
But this is what I'm saying. The ability to live that across the board is the invitation.
The hope.
Not the hope. The ability is the invitation. Invitation's not a hope. There's an invitation. Right?
I mean, I'm not a peddler in hope. I'm just saying, like,
like he has
the thing there that people hope for.
Right, and to me, it's not about hope.
It's an invitation, but invitations easily get declined.
Right, but that's the thing. That's why it's an invitation. right? Because people can look into the mystery of life and go, fuck that, right? Because the mystery of life isn't gonna force them, it's just gonna keep inviting you. Right, just like the greatness in us is going to keep calling to exploring what's possible. And I think about that with indigenous culture all the time, because the relationship of understanding nature came in a lot of different ways, right? The ability to tune into messages, to watch animals, to see how the mycelium network works. And all of a sudden you're picking up on the guidances through the lens. And everything does that. Right. We can learn how to, even in the city, you can learn how to pick up on certain things that are literally talking to everybody. And if you recognize you're connected to all that is, you can do the same thing in nature in a city, even though nature is a certain resonance and a city is a certain resonance, you can recognize things that are being conveyed in all of it. And that's what I mean by the connection of everything, you know, that we're connected to all that is not to discount that we're in the journey of exploring what the fuck that means. The misconception is when people think they know what that means and think that they've arrived while still either playing out bullshit in their misalignments or living inauthentically, right? And so most like religions live in a certain box of containment that even though they'll speak to the nature of higher God, there's still divisiveness, there's still fear-based teachings. And even though inside of it, if you get past all the bullshit, you can see where the truth resides, right? And I live to do that. I'm designed to want to explore where the truth lives in everything and how it all integrates. Right. And so now I just observe that all the time. And then what I teach in the practice has been the journey of designing something that can hold that comprehensiveness, but to actually live it is a fucking journey, bro. And this whole experience for me, Access Insight, was nothing but humbling. All I kept doing was getting right because I had my ideas about things in life, and the truth kept fucking rocking me. And me being in the space I'm in doesn't take with, I'm constantly still exploring the mystery of life. Where else can this go? What else do we tap into? If we go into nature, what else does nature have to reveal? What do all these different cultures and historical accounts have to reveal? And so there isn't this misconception.
But you think that's like a lot of like trying to grab like so much all the time? You don't think that's an issue?
That's not what I'm doing.
That's what you said.
Well, no, I'm exploring. Right.
What's the difference?
You said
Indiana Jones was exploring.
Right. Well,
and look what he did.
Well, let's be clear. The difference between exploring and questing, right? Like, there's this jewel in a tomb that we're going to go on exploration to find.
Because he wanted to know.
Right. But think about this.
From the people he didn't know about, and thought he needed to go search for.
So, but understand
and he's made a hero for it.
Right. Well, but you're now
Dr. Jones.
But do you see how this is what I love about our conversations? Whenever there's the concept of the disagreement, it's usually because what you think I'm stating is conveying that shit.
Well, I mean, how else am I supposed to think about it?
Well, a lot of different ways is the answer to that question. Right? But the invitation is, but I appreciate your lens because it speaks to, again, the heart of what you hold sacred. Right? Like you are the steward of a very specific aspect of life that you hold dear, and you want to ensure that that is kept intact.
Yes.
And I live in a space
so that more missionaries can go to indigenous
and shift, right?
That's why.
And I live in a space where that is included in all of this. And so that's my lens. So when I talk about exploring, nothing I speak to is the idea of how much can I get, or I explore to get. Right? Everything I teach is about understanding how life is lived from the inside out. So it's never about seeking; it's about the access through experience. Right, so I explore.
What is the details of that? You know, that's what I'm saying.
What I'm saying. So here's the details. The difference between living from love or fear, right? The difference between living life from the inside out or the outside in. Every way that we approach life from the outside in is a contradiction to nature, and it starts to create more distortion. But when we live from the inside out, that means if you're going to live that honest, it means you live in tune to the nature of everything around you. Not that you're separate from it, and not that you somehow can dominate it. But if you're living from truth, you wouldn't be interested in doing that anyway. You'd be interested in how can I continue to live in the sacredness of everything, that wherever I go, I get to witness more of the truth in every interaction, in every reflection, in every culture. And because culture, the diverse nature of culture wasn't designed to be a reason to be divisive or to colonize one another, right? It was an invitation to explore the nature of creativity in conjunction to all that is. And that's the things I teach from and share, that it's not this notion of how can we exploit or take. It's the understanding of, if I were to continue to access the more of me, just like a seed accesses more of it, right? Then that means I, like that tree, am continue to access more of me to contribute to what I'm a part of, to tend to it, to nurture it. Just like a tree, if it bears fruit or it bears flowers and things come and receive it to continue on, that's the same true for us. But again, that means we're actually living that. you will not speak that into existence. You will walk it, right? And then if your words match, then you're just in the sweet spot where you're not bullshitting yourself. But most of the world, in certain instances, especially with spiritual connection or especially moonlighting, right? Like cultural appropriation is moonlighting. The idea of like, see me, I'm an understanding person. See me hanging out with this village in Africa? You see, I care about black people, right? Like that kind of shit. Or like indigenous ways. I like to sing chants because I appreciate the romanticized indigenous culture, but you don't do it, like you don't honor it, or just because you like the way the song sounds.
You don't have a relationship to it.
Exactly, right? So the nature of what we're speaking to is
spent the time,
right? To really honor, and this is what I mean. The dedication of showing up in truth means you're willing to be receptive as much as you're willing to contribute, because that's the relationship of life. And that's what I think of indigenous culture. I think of that idea, even though in certain spaces of the journey of indigenous cultures, right, there are still some misalignments, there are still dualities and conflicts, and these are the things that all to clean up. But to me, all of life is about that. It's about understanding where are the misalignments, where are the alignments, how do you clean up the misalignments and continue to compound the alignments. And everything in every culture just constantly feeds us that information through their just actions. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that was a lot, bro. Damn. I was like sitting there, I was like, oh, he's taking me on a labyrinth ride, bro. Waiting to see that minotaur at the end. Oh,
look, it's a Pegasus.
That's why the labyrinth has a minotaur, because it reminds us that we have a savage nature in us. You know, we have a carnal desires.
That primal essence.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Anyway, half man, half beast. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, nature.
Where's I going with that?
Nature is not tending to efficiency and effectiveness.
No, it tends to optimization.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
How so?
So do you know what I mean when I say optimization?
In a sense.
What do you
I've
think?
seen what people do with optimization.
Well, what do you think I mean? Because you said no, which means you already formed an idea. So what do you think I mean when I say optimization?
Because of the way that nature moves is not dependent upon the way we imagine time being, or like what we do, or like in the sense that we have to get from point A to point B, like efficiency and effectiveness. You see what I mean?
Yes, but that's not all optimization is.
No, it's not. But you know, I'm going to share the part of nature that I think about,
for sure,
that I've experienced,
legit,
which is that she's not aiming for a certain thing that we would be able to conceptualize at all. What she's doing is she's bringing us to these places once again, whether it's the ocean or the mountain or the stream or the river or the desert, whatever the environment may be, there's different places that life exists to remind us that we need to slow down and we need to really embrace what is around us and take our time, not to optimize or whatever that is.
So what do you think optimize? When you say that, this is what I want to know. What do you think I mean?
I'll get to that for sure. Because I know, like for you, you're like, I'm saying it differently, which is always the case with you.
Exactly. Because remember, I actually have specific definitions for every word I use.
Because you're a unique person in the way that you do that. Okay, because you can use these words and then you'll put your definitions onto them for the understanding for other people. However, the way the society uses those words, and we can't deny this, is the way that I'm actually speaking to them, is what's happening. Because the optimization, right? So the optimization, okay, a person comes and they want to optimize nature, that's another word to say development. I can make this better. You know how? Let's put a resort on it. You see what I'm saying?
Right, and this is what I mean. So every time, and this is why I love our conversations, because every time like when you say no to me, I go, it's because he thinks I'm saying something else. Because every time you
create your own definition of these things.
Exactly, but that's the invitation for conversation. Yeah. So imagine if
I'm speaking to how it's being used with society.
But you know what my dedication to life is, right?
I do.
To clean that shit up.
Listen, I don't doubt you.
100%. But this is the invitation. So imagine if in the convo, and I say, well, nature moves optimization, and you go, well, tell me what you mean by optimization. Right now we're exploring together in that space. But I love the no's because I love that you are clear on your stance. And what's dope is I actually honor your stance because I agree with you. And so with my definitions of language, so what optimization is in the definition I use it is, and how nature moves is, it's actually speaking to the nature of health, right? How something operates. And so it's not something being just efficient or just effective. It's a three-part system in order for it to be truthful. And that is, it is what is effective, efficient, and sustainable. And so when you think of the nature of that, right, that means that everything is moving to reach whatever is the most synergistic or harmonious, however it gets there. Now, because nature operates the way it does, right, it doesn't have a judgment about the shit it's doing.
No.
You know what I mean? Which is the way things are designed to function. But when we're playing out distortions in humanity, that's when we start having judgments about shit and making our own shit up about shit. And we go, why have nature when you can have a resort? Right? And we go, because that's the best thing for us, but that's not optimization.
That's a certain mind that creates
Right, but that's not optimization. That's not optimization, right? That's like
from Kevin's definition.
Exactly, right? So when I talk about optimization, what nature's doing is exactly that, because it understands if things are going to function efficient, effective, and sustainable, then it recognizes there's moments to slow down, there's moments to speed up, depending on what's necessary. And that's how nature moves. It moves to shit that's fucking necessary. It doesn't move to like the idea of, you know, it'd be nice if someone just knocked all of me down and put a resort. Right? No. It's like,
but then she'll blast off a volcano and see what that does.
Correct, because it's always going to move towards optimization, because that's just not optimal. Do you see? And how I break it down is for that understanding, because if we were like, say, if we're in the space now where we have misalignments to clean up, that's not even a fucking debate, right? Society reflects that. But the notion of what I think of is, if we were to function in the design, everything we would do would be in concordance to nature and the flow of cycles, where we would understand how seasons work, how pole shifts work, how volcanoes work, how trees work, in a way that we then, when we reside, right, we do it in a way that is in honor of the way that the earth functions. Rather than build a structure in a place where the ground shifts, and then the ground shifts like it's designed to do, and then we go, the disaster. And it's like, well, we chose to build a structure on it thinking that shit wasn't gonna move, right? And it's that invitation for us, that where we could use that reality check of build in relationship, not in egocentrism, so to speak.
Build in a way that's in courtship.
Relationship.
Courting the relationship that is there.
Correct.
Not having to impose ourselves.
Correct. But if we're imposing ourselves, we're not building a relationship. We're building in self-centeredness. You know what I mean? And that's because there's three things
but I don't think the purpose of relationships is to be effective, efficient, and what's the other one?
Well, no, the purpose of living life in existence is to reach optimization, meaning that you live in the harmony of how things are designed. Relationships are designed. Well, the purpose of life is to be fully actualized, right? Like, and nature shows us that. Like, when you think of the nature, like the way it functions, it's showing how things get actualized. And so, like, say if I think about this all the time when you just watch how we tend to lawns, right? Let me just make this bush clean and lined, right? And it's like, let me just make this in a certain way. It looks great and clean, but what does nature do? Grow past that shit, right? It's like I didn't want to look like this. I got other things to do, right? But then we're like, how dare you, nature, right? And so when you think about the nature of relationship, if we're living in alignment, we treat relationships like that, because there's three things that support the optimization of relationship, and that is dedication, consideration, and outgrowth, right? If you're in relationship, you recognize the associated state of connection, then that means you're recognizing a portion of yourself is dedicated there, right? Because you're choosing to be recognize what you're a part of. Then in that, there's also consideration, because if you're in your relationship, it's not just about you. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so there's consideration of yourself and the other person, because it's also not fuck you, only them, and it's not fuck them, only you, right? It's the understanding of the connectivity. And then the other part is outgrowth. Every decision you make and every dynamic happening in the interactivity of a relationship is producing something. And that can be a production of truth and love and harmony and nurturing and sustainability. And it can be distortion in societies that go to war and exploit, and you know what I mean? And
all wars are started by someone who thought they were right.
Right? And then never got checked. and the distortion is built. Right? And so this is why I love, and this is why I love our Love and Thunder convos, bro. Because
Love and Thunder convos. Thunder and lightning bud.
Thunder and lightning.
You went from a dad bod to a god bod. But deep inside was a sad bod.
I fucking love it, bro. I fucking love it.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, I hear what you're saying, and I love you for it too.
And I love you for it, bro.
Helps me, elaborate upon, the way that other people think. Someone told me today, they were like, the way that you live, Kale, and just the life that you have is a very rare thing. It's like you're a rare occurrence for a lot of people. And no one's ever told me that before. So then when I get to have conversations with you in that way, it's like, oh, this is how other people think. Other people think. I'm like, great, I should practice this, learn that way. Because even too, like I said, this thing, I think I was in Mexico and I was just like, people have like these ideas about what these things are and what humans need to do, and it's this big expansive thing, and they're talking, but then I'm just like, and it's always technology like leading us. It's tech this,
All right.
and then I
But
asked
that's living
them,
from the outside.
Yeah, right. And this is a point that we would agree on too.
Yeah.
I asked them, I'm like, do you know how to like make a fire with your hands? No. Like, do you know how to make, cordage with your hand? No. Do you know the gestation of a horse? No. Do you know how to, count the moon phases? No. You see what I mean? It goes on. I was like, okay, well, talk to me when you know how to do that. And then Brick was like, well, then no one will talk to you, Kali. I love it. I was like, so am I alone?
Right, but so here's the dope thing, right? Like, because for me, when I think of nature, to me, nature really is all that is, right?
Yeah.
Nature is everything on this planet and everything in the cosmos and the multidimensionality of life, right? Nature's all of it. And for whatever reason, for me on this journey of life, I live in the access of all of that. Yeah. Like, there were spaces in life, everyone thought I was nuts, and I thought I was going crazy at times because I was tapping into things. I
love that about you.
And I appreciate you. I love that you love that.
Oh,
and I love you.
Keep going.
And so in the space of that, right, like, when I think about the access, then, like I said, I'm always looking at where everything dances together.
Yeah.
And what you're stating, this is the stuff I also talk about too. I always tell you, the mark of a civilization that operates in optimization, right, is a civilization always willing to meet capability. Right. So that means that for all the things we want to explore in technology, we also develop in capability, right? And it would match. So we wouldn't lose our ability to tie a knot or to start a fire with our hands, you know what I mean? Or any of that. And we would always be exploring the nature of what else we can tap into, but not to replace something, to keep bringing everything together.
Yeah, let's talk about obligations then, because this is good. Like what you're saying with technology, and then how it's meant to like not lose track of like
exactly
where we've come from, where we're at.
Right.
So when I think about those things of like, we're still hands-on. Like
exactly.
We're still hands-on.
We're still very hands-on.
So there's an obligation, like a respect that has to be done from that knowledge.
Yes.
That's been passed on is like, okay, I know how to make fire with my hands. So I'm gonna respect this light switch right now. And when I turn on that stove,
exactly,
and the same
bro.
thing like when, I make cordage or something, and it's like you use that to lash something down. It's like you have a lot of respect for, rope you buy from the store. You know what I mean?
Bro, the first time I made a fire from scratch, it was probably the most accomplished I ever felt in my fucking life. Because it was like the time's to sweat. Right, and then you do. There's like the recognition of it.
But you get buff though.
But you do.
It's like,
and so there go optimization.
That's what that is.
So you mean I can start a fire and work out? So, but
then my lady's like, you take so long. I just want to eat.
Right. So, but it's dope. It's like, so in the exploration of this is what I live for, and this is what creatorhood is about, right? It is the ability to recognize how everything works together, not to replace something, not to devise it, and not to make it mutually exclusive, but not to be disillusioned about the truth, right? And like, so an example, when I talk about this, how we play with consciousness, I would teach things and people go, yeah, so I can experience food in whatever I want, every way I want. And I go, yes, and you have to be honest about where you are, right? Because if you're sitting here living in this belief, operating like this, and you go, well, I have this allergy to this thing, so I can just eat it, whatever. But you have not taken the time, right, to practice commanding energy, processing and shifting, and establishing a belief by choice. If you're not at that stage, right, you're gonna eat that shit and you're gonna fucking swell up. Right? It's like, because you will not function in the lie or the disillusionment about what's possible. You have to actually live it. So then I would play with that in different ways, because to me, the experiential side of all this matters. Like, I don't teach from theory. Right? I teach from the nature of the experiences I've had, and then having to take the time to actually process what the fuck happened, and then share it. Right? To the point where it took years to even formulate this practice. And so in the journey of that, it's like being able to then offer these insights, but not to lose anything. Like, it's the nature of it's like writing, right? Like, yes, I type on the computer and I build stuff, but I love writing. Right? Pen to paper. The time of flowing with that, and I don't ever want to. I know that's how I was going to remark on that. And that beautiful space of being able to write, and those are things that offer something. And so as we grow and evolve, we don't expand to replace. You expand to live in the access, and the access is so that you have more to contribute. And so imagine the fullness of comprehensive life for someone who knows how to tend to nature, understands how animals work and what to be wary of and how they move and cycles, and then can go in a board meeting and tell you how to maneuver with people's emotions and how they talk about, you know what I mean? Like, how do you, and that's
tracking.
Exactly, right? Like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Right?
We're supposed
and
to.
So, and that's what we're designed for. And so that, for me, it's constantly wanting to expand into the capacity of doing that across the board.
Yeah.
Right? And guide that way of life, because to me, what you're doing, and you can choose to do this or not, right? You can choose to stay in the space you're in and tend to what you do already because you're beautiful at it. But in my opinion, when I think of you stepping further in your greatness, it's you living in the integrity of that and being a conduit to greater awareness of how that fits into the game, not something that people go, well, that's just that and this way of being and we function
they
like
always
this.
think my life is like such a cute little novelty.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like,
quaint.
how quaint.
And then I'm like, hey,
how adorable.
Do you know that your allergy is mostly based on a mineral imbalance?
So, you know,
and I'm like, you ever had foie gras? We shouldn't eat that.
I have a phenomenal story about foie gras, which is really cool. It was from a TED Talk that was really dope. But it was great, like, because actually this is a perfect example, right? There was a guy that talked about foie gras in a TED Talk, and I actually saved it because it was just remarkable, where he went to visit this Spanish guy in on his farm in Spain. Is he Spain or Italy?
Yeah. No offense to French people.
Right. Legit. And he goes, and so in this guy's farm, this guy who's a chef who went to visit him, right? Just a New York chef. The guy's just like, I'm New York, right? And he comes in because this guy won an award for the best foie gras, but they were wanting to discount him because of the way the method isn't the true method, even though the true method is distorted as fuck, right? But this guy does
stick to the tradition, brother.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Even though like, that's it. And remember we talked about. Remember the first time we met in Convergence, and we talked a little bit, and we were talking about traditions, right? And you were asking my lens on that, and I said, well, to understand like messages from our ancestors and traditions is to also be clear and discerning, because some things our ancestors did were in misalignment.
Yeah,
some things were on. Some traditions are fucked up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some traditions are not.
Yeah.
Like certain things, like people used to hang slaves and they did a picnic around that shit. You know what I mean? Like there were certain things that are just off. There's like certain traditions are in misalignment. So, but what this guy did.
That's when you know things went wrong. People start sacrificing people for things to change.
Something's off about this.
Hold on a second.
100%. So what this guy did on his farm is he grew all his crops, right? And geese would come to his farmland.
Yeah.
And he just built a relationship with them. So what he would do is he would let them eat half his crop. And people would go, and then they would tell other geese to come hang out because hey, yo, this guy's dope. Come vibe, right? And he would let them just be geese. And they're like
goose vibe over here.
Whole goose vibe, right?
Yeah,
they all just gaggling.
We just eat corn.
Right? We just geese gaggling around at this dude's property, right? And this dude's like,
so funny.
Eating all this shit, right?
I'm following though. I'm on you. I'm on track, baby. Keep on.
And then people start asking him, well, why do you let them eat? You can make so much more money to your farm. He goes, nope, I make enough. Right? They eat this much.
Yeah.
They leave me this. I sell. I make money. This is my land. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? Then the geese go through their regular cycle of life.
Yeah.
They transition. Then he makes foie gras.
Wow.
Doesn't have to eat. And then when he first started, you know what I mean? It's like he just honors the cycle of life.
Yeah.
He doesn't force it. Doesn't force you. Doesn't like how do I get the most out of it?
Right.
And so then what was the funny thing with that too is when he started to make it, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, this is the best foie gras I've ever had. But then they discounted. They said, well, it's not actually foie gras because it's not yellow. So then he goes, okay. So he plants a crop that the geese love that has this yellow, just the fruit or whatever the plant is, just has yellow stuff.
Bit of yellow in it?
Yeah.
Has yellow stuff in it.
Right, it has just yellow stuff in it. So then they eat it, they transition, and then there's yellow. And he's like, cool, problem solved. Anything else? Right? It's like,
this is great.
What's up? And it's those things when I think of living life in harmony is like he recognized that there was a relationship with these geese. Like they're not just something to make money off of and create disharmony around, right? And it's
he wasn't donning the capitalist hat, you're telling
100%, right? He was living in connection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is, to me, every one of us who functions in this capacity, part of our leadership is continuing to bring this to light because we've seen the world build off of not doing that.
Yeah.
Right? And everything about the world is asking for us to do that.
Right.
You know? And so the gift of your heart to the indigenous ways and the connectivity to nature, right? And my heart's dedicated to the same in that comprehensive lens is where we dance and where we get to keep guiding towards, because there's no mistaking the impact we have when we speak and how we move and the things we do. And we recognize our responsibility in that.
Right.
And so I love that, bro. And I love these combos and how we dance in it.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Societies.
Legit.
Kevin, you're so much better at this than I am. Because I know this conversation is coming to a close, and my farewells will last another 30 minutes. So please help me help these people.
I got you.
By ending this conversation.
I got you, bro. Allow me to support you, supporting me, supporting you, so we could live this together.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, first and foremost, Kale, I thank you for taking the time to vibe with me.
Yeah.
And
it's the whole goose vibe with me.
Right, the whole goose vibe. Right, we gaggling. Taking the time to gaggle together.
Gaggling.
And I just, again, I want to honor your dedication to what's sacred in life. And I look forward to more conversations that we'll build. And I want to thank everybody who's taken the time to watch this and to dedicate some of your attention to what we're doing. And if anything that we shared and conversed around offered you something, landed in some way that you get to take it honestly to yourself, awesome. And if not, I mean, I just love doing this, so we'll keep rocking. Is that you, bro? Love you. My guy. My guy. There you go.
Love you, bye.
Okay, signing off. Thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning combos.
It's a fucking goose vibe.
The goose in me sees the goose in you.